Hello, everybody. Kyle here. It's been a while since I've done a movie review, but today I'm going to be doing a review on The Mandalorian and Grogu. The Mandalorian and Grogu is the new Star Wars film directed by Jon Favreau. It is the first Star Wars film in 7 years, the last one being Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which was directed by J.J. Abrams, and it came out in 2019. I actually posted that movie review back in the day when that came out. It was, I believe, one of my first movie reviews on this channel. So it's kind of surreal to finally be talking about a Star Wars movie on this channel again. But it's been a long time coming. I have been looking forward to this movie mostly because it's Star Wars and I'm a huge Star Wars fan and I really want to see Star Wars on the big screen. I believe Star Wars belongs on the big screen. It's great to see it on TV, and I'm so grateful for the amount of Star Wars content that we've gotten over the last number of years. But it's time for them to finally come back to the movies, and I I love The Mandalorian as a show. All three seasons I enjoyed. Season 3 was my least favorite, but still, I I think I liked it more than others. But with this movie was always, I think, going to have a bit of an uphill battle because it was not only a Star Wars movie that was coming out 7 years after the last one, but it was technically season 4 of The Mandalorian. Now, there have been interviews with Jon Favreau, interviews with Filoni and all the people involved saying that they were going to make a season 4 of The Mandalorian, but the strikes happened and it kind of delayed their plans. And in this period of time, they didn't know what they were going to do. So they spoke with Kathleen Kennedy. I think they spoke with Bob Iger. And they decided maybe we should transition from TV and bring Mando and Grogu onto the big screen. A decision that I think was a massive mistake. I unfortunately was disappointed with this movie. This is the very first Star Wars movie that I've seen in theaters. The first one, at least the first new Star Wars movie that I watched in theaters was The Force Awakens. And I'm a huge fan of the Disney era of Star Wars. Love The Force Awakens, really enjoyed Rogue One, Solo, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. Um, I've walked out of pretty much all of those movies with a smile on my face. I think if I go back to it, I think the first viewing of The Last Jedi, I may have been a little bit disappointed too. But like, I think the difference between The Last Jedi and this is that I then still felt the need to go back and rewatch The Last Jedi. Where here, I don't really feel that need, which is also kind of scary because I have 3 tickets for this movie that are free, but I don't know how I'm gonna use them because I don't know how many more times I want to see this. Um, Let me just get into like the bare bones of what worked for me, what didn't work for me. So, what worked for me with the Mandalorian Grogu is, and this is something that I'm seeing many people agree on. The score by Ludwig Göransson is a masterclass. Like he really is becoming the next, Hans Zimmer, the next John Williams, that next composer that when he scores a film, it adds another layer of sauce to the formula. And I think with Göransson, his work in The Mandalorian has been astounding, and in all of his films, it's been great. But here, I really do love that he continued to put effort into this score. It didn't feel like, oh, they only signed him on because they wanted a name on there, because I was a little bit worried, to be honest. I didn't know if Ludwig was going to give us as great of a score because he was doing the Odyssey. And it's sometimes hard for composers to do multiple movies in a year, let alone a summer. So I'm glad, like, all the tracks really work. He plays the Mandalorian theme a lot, which really works. I'm a huge fan of themes. I love motifs, and I do not like when movies forego character themes. If like they did this Mandalorian movie and they didn't use the Mandalorian themes, I would not have liked it. I would have been very annoyed because the da 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 da, that theme is so integral to the Mandalorian's character, to Din Djarin's character, that if you don't have it, like it doesn't feel like the Mandalorian. Um, so I'm so glad that he brought those themes back, but he also introduced some new themes. Like there's the planet of Shikari, and there's a really cool like synth electronic X theme. It kind of sounds like Tron. I was surprised. I didn't expect that was where they were going. Rada has a really cool theme in this. Um, it's, I think, a really great score, and it definitely makes the movie. And honestly, I think it's better than what the movie is. Also, another thing I liked about this movie is I like the creature effects. That's another thing a lot of people have been talking about. They used a lot of practical effects here. Phil Tippett came in to do some of the giant mech droids, and you got the Anzellans, these alien creatures from Rise of Skywalker that we met, Babu Freak. Hey! Those guys. They are really just a blast to watch. I eat them up every time. Obviously, Grogu is, I think, both practical, though I think they do utilize a little bit more CG with Grogu this movie because it's a movie, so they can do a little bit more. Because I was noticing him like jumping around, and it looked much better than the TV show. Because in the TV show, it looks very static. It looks like a puppet that they're moving from one end to the other. But in the movie, it looks more natural. Um, I also like kind of some of the things they do with like just design wise, like with the snow troopers. They took off their masks they wear, so you see what's inside. You also get some stuff with the huts and how like they express the huts and their layer, and kind of the way the huts move is very different from what we've seen the huts before in live action. A massive step up from like back in 2004. Well, actually, back in 1997 when we saw like the first ever CG version of Jabba the Hutt for the special editions. It's such a massive, I think, step up in terms of VFX. Obviously, you have Matthew Wood doing sound. You have a lot of the great people behind the scenes contributing to making this movie look like, a full-on Hollywood production. But I gotta say, what fails this movie is the screenplay. And I think that, as I said, it was a mistake to make this from a TV show to a movie. It really feels like they took the scripts from the TV show and they just meshed them into a movie. And it's the same problem that happened with Star Wars The Clone Wars movie. When that movie was originally going to be a TV series of episodes, and they're like, no, let's make it into a movie, make more money and everything. And it just doesn't help that you're dealing with a lot of material that could probably be better stretched out on television, where you don't need to pander towards the people that haven't seen The Mandalorian. Because that's another thing with this film. This film is being presented as a continuation of The Mandalorian and Grogu's story, but it's also being presented to people that have never seen their stories before. So, whereas a season 4 of the show could take their story and just continue it, this has to do almost the bare minimum. And, well, actually, no, it doesn't actually, I think, do enough to really give these characters enough growth. Because in this film, they are just the same characters they are from the show, but they're never given any challenges that, really affect their characters. There are moments in the movie where Din could be in danger or he's in peril, but we've seen that in other seasons of The Mandalorian. There are scenes where Grogu has to possibly save Din. We've seen that in other episodes of The Mandalorian. The key to Star Wars, I think, is giving audiences something that they have never seen before, something that amazes them. That's why the original Star Wars movie was such a phenomenon and such a hit, because people would walk into that movie and they're seeing this fairy tale story brought to life, connected with science fiction, and it brings them back to the days of, old serials, knights protecting princesses, and like there were so many things in there that they had not quite seen, like they were reminded of, but seeing the first Star Wars was unlike anything else. And every Star Wars movie after that tried to actually, bring us something new. I think back to Empire Strikes Back, and we learn about Yoda, and we learn about characters like, Lando Calrissian, and we get to Return of the Jedi. You introduce Jabba the Hutt. You show us things regarding the Ewoks, and you show us the Emperor, and then you get to the prequels, and we're learning about the Jedi and this new era of Star Wars, and we're learning about pod racing, and we're learning about the clones, and there's so many things that are being added. Even the sequel trilogy, we're getting to meet characters like Finn, who's defecting from the First Order, and we get to see things like in The Last Jedi with the Rey and Kylo, connections, and the Force visions. And there's so many things about Star Wars that, to me, when you introduce something new to audiences, that's when Star Wars thrives. This film doesn't introduce anything new. The planets look the same. I'll say now Hutta is probably like the best planet, because it at least looks a little bit different than what we've seen before, but it's still in a way a forest-esque planet. I mean, you have a planet that looks like Hoth, a planet that looks like Coruscant, and it just doesn't affect you. And that's another thing about this movie. I never felt anything watching it. And I just keep remembering the time that I saw The Force Awakens for the first time. And that incredible scene where Rey picks her, the lightsaber flies into Rey's hand for the first time. And the chills I got when I saw that. And to think that so many young kids could look up and watch that movie and see their generation, their hero, now being the one that gets to take on the next legacy of the Jedi. I mean, that's what Star Wars has always been about. It's been about making kids feel like they can do the impossible. They can go on a journey and they can become the hero. This movie, it's about the Mandalorian going on a job to rescue a Hutt, and then get into trouble with other Hutts, face some peril, and that's about it. Like, this film is very apolitical. It doesn't really say anything about the state of the galaxy. It's a film that doesn't really have any themes whatsoever. There's a lot of things in this film actually regarding fathers and sons, but they're never fully embraced. Rada the Hutt being the son of Jabba the Hutt. What is it like for the son of the most notorious gangster in the Star Wars universe? What's it like for him to leave that side of his family? What's it like for him to be in a gladiator ring? How does he deal with that? How does he deal with his other family? And it's just very surface level. They don't really delve deep into that. And they don't even really compare it to Din and Grogu's relationship as father and son. you don't really get a sense of who Din Djarin is as a character. I don't even know if I don't even remember if they said his name was Din Djarin in this movie. Most of the time, it's just, you just see the Mandalorian walking around. And that brings up another problem with this film. And I don't know. I don't know if many other people agree with me, but Pedro Pascal is not in it enough. And when he is on it, when he is showing up, I feel like most of the time he's kind of just phoning it in. And I understand that, there's the creed. Din Djarin cannot take off his helmet, but it's hard to care about a character in this movie when he's really not presented with any challenges whatsoever. Sure enough, they'll take off his helmet. Sure enough, he'll have to try and fight his way out of a pit of creatures. But like, what is it? What does this really have to say about his thoughts on the universe? And like a lot of this I'm saying, it sounds like I'm, oh, Kyle, we don't want to, we would just want a fun Star Wars movie, a Saturday morning serial. We just want to see planets blowing up. We want to see bad guys getting destroyed and all this, good versus evil, this and that. But that's not what Star Wars is purely just about. Star Wars isn't just about the battle of good and evil. Star Wars is about many, many things. And even the battle of good and evil is way more complex in the Star Wars movies than it is in this movie. Hell, it's even more complex in the TV series than it is here. A TV series that delved into war criminals and people switching to other sides and authoritarianism and how remnants are trying to survive. And the Imperial remnants in this movie barely have characters whatsoever. The pacing, I think, struggles. It's way too long for its own good. I think that the huts are interesting to me because I did like the idea of Rada being almost like Grogu's next caretaker, but there's also something about the movie that it makes me wonder if they went the right route with the huts, because this is a storyline that I feel could have been better suited towards Boba Fett than for Din Djarin, since Boba Fett is part of this criminal underworld, this organization. And and Din Djarin here, he is more so going after like the Imperial warlords, and he's going after that side of the Star Wars universe. The Hutts being brought into it feels a little bit less his type of thing and more like Boba Fett's thing. And that's like a whole other issue with how Boba Fett's been handled and how he's been truly mishandled in the last number of years. But going back, I think that they needed a better screenwriter. I mean, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and Noah Clore, they've written episodes of The Mandalorian, but that does not mean that they can suitably write a great film, because Jon Favreau's done other movies, and he's done some of my favorite movies, Iron Man and Iron Man. Well, I'll say this. Jon Favreau is a director that I've enjoyed throughout my entire life, but lately I have not been impressed. The last movie I really liked that he did was Jungle Book, but I've not been too impressed by some of his other efforts, even though I did like his episode of The Mandalorian. I'm seeing it's getting towards about 20 minutes of this review. So I think I'll end it with me just thinking about the future of Star Wars, and that I'm just kind of worried right now. The fact that this year we got the Maul Shadow Lord, a phenomenal series. I highly recommend anyone watching it. And it delves deep into the psyche of Maul. It delves into the state of the galaxy, the Empire, and it feels, I guess you could say, more adult. But what worries me about Star Wars is the fact that they made this movie and it just doesn't feel like the right direction. It feels like they are too scared to take any more risks. And I'm personally not someone that will compare Andor to this. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, this should have been like Andor, or Andor did this. Why can't they do this? I think that Andor is very different from this. And I did not expect this to be like Andor whatsoever. But Andor represents a show that does take risks. It represents something where they're saying, what is something new we can add to this universe? This is a film that is really only there because it's supposed to say, okay, here's a Star Wars movie. Here's the Mandalorian and Grogu. Enjoy yourself. And I feel like Star Wars is much more than that. We should expect more than that. If this was the case, then all we would be getting for the foreseeable future would be just Din Djarin and the man and Grogu going on adventures to different planets, and that would be it. I feel like we are way beyond that at this point with Star Wars. I think even children deserve better than that, because as a child, I grew up with the prequels, which were films that were definitely hated on when they came out, but they dealt with a lot of political uh like themes and ideas and fascinating studies on characters like, say, Anakin Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, you got to see into what made Star Wars Star Wars. And here it just feels like, what is something that will put a smile on someone's face, as opposed to what will be something that kids and adults will take with them for years to come. Because I don't really see any kid watching this movie and being like, I want to be like Grogu, or I want to be like the Mandalorian. I I want to see Star Wars make you feel like, I want to be like Rey. I want to be like Padme. I want to be like Leia or Han or Luke or Finn or Poe, like any of these characters. And I don't think that this movie does that. Um, Nor do I think that right now we should want that to be, well, we should want less than that. Because the thing is, we have Star Wars Starfighter coming out next year. And I am looking forward to Star Wars Starfighter. I think Star Wars Starfighter is going to be an entertaining time. Sean Levy, he makes entertaining movies. He makes movies that definitely impress people, at least entertain people, I mean. But Sean Levy also makes movies that aren't as layered as some other directors that we've had direct Star Wars. Rian Johnson, for one. And I feel like that is, you know, you don't need to have Tony Gilroy do every Star Wars project. But I'm just hoping that Starfighter gives us more of a return to the themes of Star Wars, more of a return to what makes Star Wars so beloved. And also, like, I'm just hoping that the future of Star Wars is more about taking risks, pushing the boundaries of things, not let's just put a TV show on our screen. A few more things I want to cover. This film does not begin with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and I was massively disappointed by that, because it just screams to me, we're not making Star Wars movies now. It screams to me like, we'll make as much Star Wars content as possible, but it's going to be so oversaturated that we don't no longer even recognize it as Star Wars. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away is a staple of the Star Wars theatrical experience. It's been like that for every movie. Rogue One, Solo, Clone Wars all had that. This film does not have that. And once again, oh, Kyle, you're nitpicking. You don't need that for every movie. You just need it for the sagas. But what does that really say about the future of Star Wars? Does that mean that we can have a Star Wars movie that looks like, I don't know, a film like, say, The Kissing Booth, which I've never seen The Kissing Booth. So maybe it is a great movie. But, like, I don't want Star Wars to feel like it's not living up to the quality it deserves to live up to. I want Star Wars to feel like it is the event. I want Star Wars to feel like it is the special thing that makes everybody feel like they can do anything. And another thing I want to mention is I really loved Embo in this movie. I've said a lot of my grievances, but everything they did with Embo as a bounty hunter was chef's kiss. Just beautiful. And I'm so glad that they included him in this movie. I'm glad we got an actual real bounty hunter and not like IG 37. It's not the real, IG 88. It's a different one, even though I did like IG 11. But still, like, it feels like for the past several years in Disney Star Wars, they've been too afraid to bring the real bounty hunters back. And they're like, let's do not Forlom, or let's do not Dengar, or actually let's put Dengar in the movie, but we're not going to tell you that's Dengar. You'll have to read about it in a visual guide. Like, I want to see, Bosk. I want to see Zuckuss. Like, give us those bounty hunters. Where are they? So to see Embo, a bounty hunter in the Clone Wars, show up and go after Din and be a straight up badass was lovely to see. And I don't really know where Jon Favreau was saying like Kurosawa inspired George Lucas in Star Wars. Kurosawa inspires us. Maybe it was for Embo. I don't know. But yeah, so thumbs up to Embo. Thumbs up to the score, the the props masters, the sound design, all the technical aspects, huge props. But like a lot of the stuff here, they wasted Sigourney Weaver. I think a lot of the things with the characters, they just didn't feel like they gave them any weight. Did not feel like we got to see any growth from these characters. Yeah, so that's my review for The Mandalorian and Grogu. A pretty shocking opposite reaction than my Rise of Skywalker, which I did enjoy, and I still enjoy The Rise of Skywalker. But I'm sure there are many people, I've seen many people that do enjoy The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I'm glad you do. I'm glad that maybe there will be a new audience of kids that will enjoy Star Wars and become fans of Star Wars as a result of this. But I'm just not one of them. So here's to the next Star Wars project. I hope, like Ahsoka Season 2, I'm really excited for that. I'm hoping it's as good as the first season or better. And I'm hoping that we get some good Star Wars content coming out soon. But yeah, that's The Mandalorian Grogu. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of Mandalorian Grogu in the comments below, and have a great day.